Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker fan sports show.
I think that they understand that we have a chance to be a good team, and it starts this week for us coming back home. So we're excited to play at home, excited to play in front of the home fans.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honky.
Husker Nation, or Redcast Nation, you've grown to over 27,000 now, making you the sixth largest city in Nebraska, overtaking Fremont. Watch out, Kearney. You are next.
Ooh, that'd be a big step. You know, Kearney, that's getting serious there.
I mean, that's not with UNK included, so that would just be
right.
Kearney proper, but still.
I mean, seriously, after that, we go to Grand Island and Bellevue, and then it's Lincoln and Omaha, right? I mean,
it's a huge
out of control.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's going to be quite the celebration next year when we knock all those off. Also with Boomer. Boomer's
Husker
muted.
Staff, really hoping all Redcast fans and Husker staff just don't insult Northern Illinois head coach Tom Hammock this week. No disrespect. So
don't even stand on our own midfield logo. Maybe
exactly.
That's
yeah,
just
kind of stay over in the new exit. Yeah, or the new tunnel walk. Just kind of enjoy that. Let's just do everything right.
That's right. And also with our good friend Redcast Rob.
Oh, good evening, guys. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm still choking down that Kool-Aid.
Yeah, he's still drinking it. Well, Rob, yourself, Honky, yours truly, in Boulder last weekend. It was
cool story,
an experience.
Dave. Cool story. Cool story,
What's the story? Well, I had a great time. I think Honky and I probably sang karaoke with our good friend Carrie, who hosted us there till 3 or 4 in the morning. I don't know how late it got, Honk. Rob, you exited a little bit earlier than that.
I did. I had stuff to
Go ahead, Honk.
No, his beautiful wife put up with us until like way in the late hours there after the game. But that was just the way that we, tried to finish up that game. It was a rough game on the TV, or in the stands, but it was a great game, a great atmosphere, a great weekend in Colorado, just with Husker fans on Friday night in Estes Park, and a great time with a lot of other Husker fans too. So,
yeah, absolutely. We drink our sorrows away. Rob, I think maybe you were too despondent to actually get to that stage.
Yeah, I just.
How are you doing?
Well, I've kind of have this new thing where I'm trying not to drink when I go to the games because I'm trying to take in the full experience. And honestly, I was looking back at it, and at the game where I was sitting, everything was great. I mean, people were nice enough, all that. But like once I left my seats every single time, it was just a terrible fan experience. Folsom Field, I know you like the field house, Dave, but it feels like
I love it.
I feel like I'm hanging out. I feel like I'm hanging out in somebody's garage. It smells weird in there. They've got TV.
That was my garage.
The TV behind us is bigger than the TV that they have at Folsom Field, and it's on like a 2-minute delay. So if you're trying to like keep up with the game and get some food, you can hear the announcer make the announcement outside what the play is going on, and then 2 minutes later you see the actual play on the TV. I mean,
it's about a minute.
Well, you know what? At least they're paying Dion, because they sure as heck aren't putting any money towards anything else over there.
I felt, we always talk about all this nostalgia for how college football used to be, Honk, right? And it's like, oh, I wish it used to be like that. And then we go to a rivalry game like this, and we have 18-year-old kids swearing at us, and we think it's horrible, right? Most of the poor language and whatnot was all these college kids who saw a 1-11 team last year. They were never that good of fans to begin with, and now suddenly they have no idea what they're doing. And the field house is old, and it's a little bit decrepit, and the TVs are literally like the one Honky had in his Theta dorm room circa 1997. But it's all hilarious, and they actually improved their beer line significantly. So I was impressed with that, Boomer.
I only was in line for food for about a minute and a half, really. I mean, I will give them credit for that. And I mean, and so many people there kept they'd say, "Oh, you're with the Redcast, you're number one." I mean, at least I think that's what they were saying to me all the time because they kept showing me one finger. So I saw a lot of that. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because, Dave, you and I, we live in Colorado, and I do a lot of stuff like in the community and I hear it from people, but it's like, I had people walking up to me just being like, man, like that first half, like you guys are going to be good. Like you guys, I really like to see what you guys do as Rule builds this because, that defense was way better than we expected it to be. If you guys could stop your turnovers, that game probably would have gone well into the fourth quarter with the score being close, everything along those lines. Right. So I'm kind of segueing here for that. But I mean, at the same time, this is something that actual fans, people I know that are CU fans here, the one or two of them in Greeley, they talk to me and that's what they were saying to me. And then of course I had my token Raiders comment, the Raiders did beat the Broncos on Sunday. So it was
oh my goodness
weekend for me. So I was doing pretty good with my CU friend fans because they're also Broncos fans. So
you know how to turn me off to someone else. There's a honky.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the day actually was right after the game, immediately following it, and it was Redcast Rob and then Redcast Talon, who we'll get him on a show here. Dave's nephew, who's running our TikTok. I sat with Talon during the game. He's a big kid. He looks like he could play football. He's a tough guy, and he was going to take on about every CU Buff fan outside the stadium. And then Rob was not turning down any chance to talk back to people. And I mean, I pretty much separated myself from those two for a little bit. And then Dave
someone called me Four Eyes, honky. I was wearing glasses. They call me Four Eyes. I'm like, what?
Well, but you know what? The best part was when Dave came in, Dave just grabbed them both by the neck. I mean, it was like Grandpa Dave. And he's like, no, we're done. We don't do that. We're Husker fans. We have 45 conference championships. And he went through all the stats. And it's like, we're a blue blood fan and we don't do that. And I was like, that's pretty cool. That's exactly it. And you just walk right down the street and people will say stuff to you and you just move on and you don't need to get in fights. I've seen some videos of some of the fights that were going on in the stands. I think, Dave, you said there was one of them that was going on near you. And I'll knock Husker fans just the same way I would Colorado fans in that. I mean, just knock it off. I mean, like that doesn't have to happen. I mean, I've been to so many stadiums in every environment. The Colorado fans that were sitting right around us, we got a little bit of guff from some of the people behind us. Nothing bad. The ones in front of us were really cool. We had Husker fans around us too. It was a really good environment in our little area. And once the game gets done, you get the heck out of there after a loss. I've learned that in 2001. I've learned that in 2019. Right. But I didn't. I guess it doesn't bother me as much. And I think I'm more annoyed too. I think the beginning of this discussion was with Dion and some of the narrative stuff that goes on. But whatever. I mean, they're getting a lot of people to show up for a game that they couldn't get anyone to show up for a year ago there. So I guess from that perspective, good on them.
Right.
Okay, I think we've talked about that game enough. What about you guys?
Well, actually, I would like to hear Boomer's perspective as the one that was not at the game. I'd like I haven't really actually listened to any of the audio or video from the telecast or even the big noon kickoff or anything like that. I mean, just in general. I mean, what did it look like on TV?
Well, first off, I watched the game at home with graphic designer Dan. He stopped by. He was visiting his daughter in Lincoln and came by to watch the game. So I made chicken wings and a nice little charcuterie board. So we enjoyed the food, at least, was excellent. So, and I don't know if you know this, but during the pregame and a lot of the other stuff, they tended to talk about Deion Sanders quite a bit. It was strange. That kind of dominated a lot of the discussion on TV and strange commercials and halftime and every other show known to man. But the announcers, I thought were good.
How were the TV ratings, Boomer?
They were good. It was one of the most watched games of the week. It was I think 8 million people watched it, if I remember right, somewhere around there. Yeah, it was a very high ratings. So, a lot of people are trying to credit Colorado for that, and there's truth to that. A lot of people are turning in to watch, Dion and see what happened. But Nebraska fans certainly drew a lot of that as well. I mean, Nebraska fans show up to watch every game, and people will, across the country will watch it. So that was good. And the announcers I thought were fair. Joel Klatt, despite being a Buffalo guy, he seems to be fair to Nebraska and was pretty laudatory, I think, for the defense for most of the game. And most of the announcers were, at least until things started breaking down in the second half, and then it was just kind of. It was what it was. Colorado's offense started clicking a bit, and that kind of became the subject of all talk. And Otherwise, the chicken wings were good at least. So we had that to finish. Yeah.
Hey, fellas, I have to show you this. This is from Vegas Jer. We know him well. We stayed with him and his lovely wife, Steph, at their place the week of Minnesota. This is our first ever. I don't even know what this is called, but when we were at Vegas Jer's house after the Minnesota game, we watched the Husker Online episode that night, the after one, and like people were paying money to like get their comments, posted. And so apparently Vegas Jer has just given us
Really?
$19.99, which if they do that, then we're obliged. We have to show their comment since they're paying. But I didn't even know that was an option apparently with YouTube. I mean, that shows how
Holy
little
cow.
I know about this stuff. So we just got super chats. Jeremy just called it. Vegas
That is
Jer.
awesome.
Support the Redcast.
Well-
So apparently that's available on our show. So
I mean, Vegas Jer is the Redcast fan that just keeps giving. I mean, I don't know if we had enough chance to thank all of his kindness for our trip to Minneapolis, but that's awesome, Vegas Jer. Really appreciate it.
Well, he says, in
Very
honor
cool.
of the whole crew back together, here's a few bucks for a beer for everyone. P.S. Miss you all. See you this weekend, Honky GBR. And that's true. I will see you this weekend, Jeremy. This is going to be a fun weekend just to get the whole crew back together in terms of Husker Nation. We're getting back to oh wow, more people now. This is amazing.
We made
got
more
more
money
stickers.
tonight than we've ever made on YouTube before with all of our watches. And we have
That's
advertising
hilarious.
on and
This
everything.
is incredible. Well,
We'll talk all night, guys. Don't
I mean,
worry.
honestly, the
Skurs
The,
fan 23.
yeah,
It's like a telethon.
it feels like it, and if you give now,
Skurs fan 23. Thank you.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, Skurs fans. I will say that too is that I've kind of taken the last couple of weeks off myself, just trying to get back into the right mental state. And I mean, there was a lot of Husker stuff going on, right? And this year, I'll probably go to more games than I've gone to ever. I'm going out for the Michigan game in a couple of weeks, right? I've gone to Minnesota and CU already this year, so 2 road games. So that's already a record for me as far as number of games going and living out here. But man, that experience in Minnesota was probably one of the best experiences I've had traveling wise with a group of guys. Like, we should try to do that once a year, and figure out something like that.
Well, if we keep on getting paid for doing the show, Rob, I think
we might be able to afford it, right? Like, give to Honky's kids. But I mean, and I mean, it's great. And hopefully, Jerry can just start, or Jeremy can start just buying houses wherever it is that there are away games. So then he can just host us at those houses. And hopefully there's a TPC course there too, because then he can get us on at a nice discounted rate as well.
Investment.
So,
That's what
thank you,
I
Jerry. We appreciate you more than
Well,
anything. It was great.
Rob, Honky, Boomer, maybe we can turn the page here a little bit by launching into an offense and defensive segment. We can kind of recap what we liked, what we saw on Saturday at the Colorado game, and then kind of play that forward and see how maybe that translates to success with the home opener on Saturday night. Sound like a good plan?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, let's talk scoring explosion, all things Husker offense. And Honky, I'll start with you. I mean, we ran the ball, right? We are running the ball for 200 yards a clip, which in some years hasn't always been easy. And we've got a little lighter couple opponents coming up. Maybe we can keep that average up or even increase it. What do you think?
Yeah, I know Coach Rule talked about wanting to get to 250 yards a game as a goal, and which has only happened one time for us in the last 20 years. I think it was 2012. So we're talking Amir Abdullah days, Rex Burkhead, and offensive linemen like Spencer Long and Jeremiah Searles. So those are guys going to the pros. That's the last time we averaged 250 yards a game rushing, which is crazy to me because still, my 1980s and 90s brain, I just think 300 yards a game is nothing. And that's what we used to average. And every year we were, number 1 in the country in rushing. But it's a different game today. And so getting over 200 yards a game like we have these first 2, that's big. And, it's so funny. Mac and I were talking last night. We did the Matt's rule. And Matt said on it, I don't disagree with him. He goes, I was surprised we didn't call as many, runs for Jeff Sims last week. And it's like exactly what we said don't do the first week. We're like, don't call so many QB runs. But, the second week, it's like, why didn't we call more QB runs? You cannot make – I don't want to just say all of Husker Nation. You can't make Mac and I happy, apparently, because no matter what you do, we're probably gonna say something. But look, I want to see option, and I think that that's something that we can really do with this offense. I think we need to get under center, like we started to do a lot in the second half there against Colorado. Some of that out of necessity. We were not very clean out of the shotgun, and dropping some of the snaps, and so a physical approach under center. I think of that 27-yard run that Irvin had up the gut, and it was under center, and it's wide receiver motion, and then they're doing all the polling and everything. I mean, you were seeing some huge holes where we were sitting at in the end zone, looking at from the back. I mean, you'd see these holes just open up, and it reminded me of the counters that we were seeing back in 2001 that Sean Watson was calling against us. You'd see so much motion from side to side, but you just see this gigantic hole and go right through it. I think that can be an offense. That can be something we can build off of. I don't know how much we have to go in the shotgun, at least the next 2 weeks. Let's get good under center and let's hand the ball off and let's roll out of that and have real quick reads for Sims or whoever the quarterback's going to be. And I think you can build a lot off of that. Yeah.
Boomer, I mean, it was loud in the stadium, but I mean, I've been in louder environments. But it did seem like that noise did have an issue with the silent count and whatnot. I don't know what that looked like on TV, but it feels like those are things that, as frustrating as they are as fans, that's a type of fumble that's correctable, right? I mean, that's not a big change, you would think, right?
Well, you'd hope. I mean, this isn't like it's his first game ever. I mean, maybe coming from Georgia Tech, it might be
26. Yeah, exactly. I hear you.
I got a little concerned when people said it was loud in there. Yeah, but the stadium should have been, 40-50% Husker fans. So, I mean, imagine what it's going to be like, in some of these Big Ten stadiums, if you play in a pretty loud environment.
What do we think? We had maybe 10,000 there, guys?
No, it was I'd say it was like 30% of the 30%. Fan base.
Okay, it was hard to tell on TV.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was that
you couldn't get a good.
You don't think it was that high, Dave? I was trying to.
Yeah, let's say it's about 10 to 15,000 of a 52,000 seat stadium. To Boomer's point, that would only be 37,000 Colorado fans.
Yeah,
I will say they were loud. There's 37,000 were loud.
The student section was extremely loud,
and they got loud.
Yeah, which is good, which is what you want to see in a college environment. So, so there is that. Yeah, and I guess are we not preparing for that? I guess. I mean, are they doing this in practice? I mean, Big Ten stadiums.
Well, Rule admitted to not doing it as much, which,
to
his credit, at least he's acknowledging that. But it is a little surprising, right?
Yeah, that worries me a bit. And
that's
then,
frustrating either.
One of the comments on the running game is just I kind of thought we'd be a lot more effective, or just consistent in the running game than we were. Because it seems, we ran for, a decent number of yards, but a big chunk of that was about, I think, 3 particular carries. I remember it was Stu Manji on Twitter. He likes to break down those stats. And we had, 224 yards, and 127 of those were just 3 carries. And one of those was that 40-some yard carry that, Ramir had kind of in the last minute and, garbage time, quote unquote. And that's the one thing I think this team really needs to work on in the running game is having a good, long, sustained drive where you're getting, 4 or 5 yards a pop and you can complete a whole drive and score at the end of that drive. That's something they haven't done yet.
I think that part of to counter that though, Boomer, is that, with the turnovers where they were untimely, things like that. I mean, I think we probably would have had a lot more rushing yards and but there's no way to tell because, we 3 lost fumbles and a poor handoff by Sims to that just ended up on the ground and that was it. Right. And I mean, that's 4 turnovers on 4 drives that we'll never know. Right. And the same thing in Minnesota as well. So it's such a hard thing to balance out because it's like, can we maintain the consistency of the running game for the entire game without turning the ball over and then talk about those results? I would love to, because I think that that's something that, I think that's something as we all agree, it's something to build on. It's impossible to know what the true results are going to be when we're dropping the ball on the ground so much. It's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is about correctable mistakes like that. It's interesting. Right before we started the show, I was watching Thursday Night Football, and Cam Jurgens is starting for the Eagles as a guard, actually. And they had about a 12-play drive that took up 8 minutes of time, only threw 1 pass. They just ran the ball right down Minnesota's throats, and Hurts only had 2 runs. He had 1 designed outside run, and then he sneaked the ball in for the touchdown, right? But they just ran it, right? It was very simple. I mean, I would love to see. I mean, if we have a chance to do that versus Northern Illinois or La Tech, we need just to do that and have that experience of like a 12-play drive that where we just like enforce our will. And obviously to Rob's point, I mean, you have to have 12 clean snaps at that point, you know?
Yeah. I think we need to take as many elements out of the plays that can trip us up. And for one thing, just being in the shotgun right now, that has tripped us up a bit. It's an extra snap. We've hit a guy in motion running between the ball and the snap and everything. I would just try to get really good this week really good at doing very few things. Get under center, get in the I formation, spread them out and move motion the receiver from side to side like we were doing with that long run that Irvin had. Do some of those things, but be under center, run downhill, and do that to Dave's point there against, seeing what the Eagles did. Do it 8-9 times out of 10. We don't have to be so many things right now on offense. So the more things we throw into it, let's get into the shotgun. Let's roll out and have. We just got to be quick with our decisions, and if something's there, take it and just do it 3, 4, 5 times in a row. Wait until the team stops it. And so I just feel like we've done a lot of offense. It feels like we've thrown a lot out there. And I go back to the Minnesota game defensively. I thought Tony White did a great job against Minnesota of pulling back on things. Some things weren't working a couple of times, and he just kind of pulled back, played very vanilla. And then by the time we got to Colorado, he was throwing more stuff out there. The team was kind of growing around it. Offensively right now, we throw more at him, and that's when we get a turnover. We do something that is just unforced. And even trying to get into some tempo at sometimes, that's when we jump off sides on the O-line. I just want to see us just line up, play 10 good plays in a row, and see if you can get a touchdown. If you can't do that against these next two teams, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Boomer, I don't know if you've done much of a scouting report on Northern Illinois, but they have to be the Jekyll and Hyde group of 5 team out there. They go and get a P5 belt at Boston College, but still they went and got a victory against a bigger name program on the road, and then they come home and lose to Southern Illinois, an FCS school.
Right.
But I think they're pretty experienced on the defense. I think they have 8 starters back and a pretty experienced D-line. So, I mean, do you feel like imposing your will is something that we can actually accomplish on Saturday night?
I think so. To their credit, they are a good run defense, and they have played those games well. Boston College, like you said, they're a Power 5 team, just being, generous to them, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, haha.
By definition, as of now.
Yeah. And watching, a little bit of that, what I was able to pick up on the Southern Illinois game, the Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois battle, the loser has to claim Middle Illinois for the next year. So that game, their defense again played pretty well in that game. The big weak point was 12-year returning starter, that quarterback Lombardi threw quite a few picks in that game. I think he threw 3 interceptions, or at least or had some turnovers in that game. So so there is, I think, some potential not only for the offense to hopefully do well, but for the defense to generate those turnovers to get the offense kind of on track is kind of what I'm hoping to see this week. Because we haven't talked about the defense yet, but that is one thing I think the defense had, although they've been playing well, the one thing they haven't done a lot is generate a lot of turnovers, particularly interceptions, considering as many pass attempts that we've had against us. I was hoping it'd be more. Yeah. We can cover that in the defensive time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, obviously, other things of note offensively, Thomas Vidoni did make an impact, a late touchdown, obviously, but a touchdown all the same. And we did see Henrik Harburg take some significant snaps. Seems like the Jeff Sims question is he healthy enough to play or not? It feels like a lot of people, and we just got a comment there from Tony Hayek of, good thing Sims isn't playing this week. I guess I haven't heard anything definitive yet, so I'm not going to make a decision in my mind on who's actually starting. I feel like they think Jeff Sims
said it was day-to-day. Yeah, he said it was.
Yeah, so what does that mean?
Day-to-day.
Does that mean he's not starting?
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we're day to day here too at the Redcast.
I mean,
so,
I will say too that you mentioned Fedoni there, and I mean, imagine how much pressure that kid's been under, right, for the entire offseason, knowing he's coming back. Man, let's just hope that just shook off the cobwebs there, right? He got in a late drive. Yeah, it was late in the game. It was kind of a blowout at that point, but he still like made the catch, caught the touchdown. He's got that out of the way, so maybe we can see a little bit more out of him this weekend on Saturday. And it's I mean, the defense for Northern Illinois is the one side of the ball that they really think they have a lot of depth at along the defensive line there. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see that challenge, right? And just keep pounding the ball at him, maybe tire him out, and we'll be at home, so we hopefully we can just impose our will on that and go from there.
Yep. Honky, anything else on the offense that you want to point out?
I want to point out the physicality. We mentioned it a little bit last night. Mac and I did. We thought it was really important going into last week to hit their guys, Hunter in particular, and to come back and see some of the. It was hard to see it in the game sometimes as much as watching it on replay, but man, they took it to him. With Borkarcher and with Fedoni. I mean, we put tight ends on him, and that's a great game plan. I mean, there's something to build off just the physicality of this team. We've seen it on the tackling side on defense and in special teams, guys just flying down the field. Micah Gabor, or Bear, I guess you don't say the G, but Bear, the linebacker got himself on the field in the second game because of the play that he was doing in the first game in special teams. Same with Javen Wright as well. That's a great sign that this is a physical football team. And I thought they really showed that well yesterday or last week. And then also talking about, the D-line that Northern Illinois is going to have, there are some things I like what we're doing on the offensive line. Now, unfortunately, that's 5 players to make the entire unit go, but Ben Hart specifically on the right side, I was watching him, last week, and I like it, the physicality. There's a play where I think it was one where we kind of scrambled out, and he's just laying on top of the defensive lineman. He took the D lineman down, and he's just laying on top of him on the ground. Ben Hart, the improvement that I think we wanted to see out of him, we're seeing it. And now I think the next step is when can we get Prohaska back, and how healthy can he be? They said that he's ready to go, or he's, day to day, that whole thing, that he's kind of right there too. Can we get him out there this week, next week, get a couple games under his belt before we go and play Michigan? I think that's really important. We need to get that left tackle slot solidified.
You think they slide Corcoran in at that point?
I mean, yeah, he can slide in. Him and Piper can split some snaps there, right. Lutovsky. But we need to get that left tackle spot solidified, and that's been a problem. And I just think Corcoran, it's a tough spot for him to play. I don't think that's his number one spot. And through necessity right now, we've been putting him there. But if we can get Prohaska back there and for a couple of games here, then maybe we can kind of get that molded with that offensive line.
Hey, Boomer, can you throw a comment up there real quick? Because I just want to say something about this comment that got up there, the Dave Bremer one up there, and I just get so sick of seeing these comments here about, he's saying that Sims is going to play just enough with another Adrian Martinez scenario, which will kill Matt Rule. Okay, let's put an end to that right now. Matt Rule isn't going anywhere this year. They aren't going to fire him after one season. Okay, we are in the middle of a rebuild right now, Dave. We are in the middle of trying to build this team up, build some depth, bring in some recruits. We'll build through the transfer portal. Jeff Sims is probably only here for 1 year. We've got guys coming in next year that are going to be really good quarterbacks for this program. Rule has us going in the right direction. Our defense looks phenomenal. They are probably one of the better looking defenses I have seen in college football so far. The only reason they gave up so many points last week is because they were on the field so much because of turnovers by the offense. But at the same time, Rule's not going anywhere. So just knock it off, man. Matt Rule is not. All
right, Rob. Right,
okay.
We'll translate
some passion here. We can sense
over
that.
to throwing the bones here, and we can talk about that defense. But I think your point taken, I guess, in the simple fact that Rule does have Sims as his number one quarterback, and that's probably going to be the case the rest of the year as long as he's healthy. We don't know if that's the case this week or not. Can Jeff Sims play better than he did the first 2 games? Absolutely. Is he going to be the solution long term here at Nebraska? Maybe not. Right. So we'll find out though. Right. And to Rob's point, we hopefully will have a depth at quarterback in the future. Honky.
Yeah, I just want to make one point about the comparison between the two of Sims and Martinez. And this goes because Rob and I had a big disagreement back in the 2019 Nebraska-Colorado game. Excuse me. And my issue at that point was that I didn't think Martinez was being used right in the offense for what his skill set was. That's not an issue I have right now with Sims. I think they're trying to use him right. I think they're trying to build an offense around his skill set. His issue simply 100% end of story is just turnovers. Now, that's a huge deal. So to the Daves out there and to anyone that's frustrated about the turnovers, I get it. I mean, I get it. That's got to stop pronto. And that's we talked about last night about the difference between patience and urgency. I can be very patient with the staff. I can be very patient with the rebuild. I can be very patient at the 30,000 foot level. I'm very urgent about the penalties, and the turnovers have got to stop now. There's no reason, rebuild or not, that can't stop. And so if Sims can get that stopped, hang on to the ball, get rid of the ball fast, and not hold on to it forever, when you're throwing it and giving the reads out. You got to knock that stuff out. If he does that, he does some other things really well. And he needs some guys to help him around him too. We had some drop balls and drop passes there last week. So there's a lot of good that Sims has done too to build off of. I've had to rewatch the game a couple times to see it because it's easy just to jump on the turnovers. But I 100% agree with anyone, Dave there included, about the frustration and the turnovers. They've got to end. And if they don't, I mean, you've eventually got to pull somebody if it keeps happening over and over and over again. But we're 2 games in. Let's get home. Let's stop those turnovers.
That's right. All right, guys, let's transition and throw the bones here and talk about all things defense, which, generally speaking, pretty positive, to be honest with you. I mean, Honky and I had a pretty long talk after the game there in Boulder. And, I didn't take the loss too hard because I'm that impressed with this defense, right? Obviously, they ended up giving up some points in the second half, but they were out there quite a bit, and we just need to play more complementary football. But the first 25 minutes of that game, we shut down that Colorado offense. And really, if it wasn't for those turnovers that we've already been talking about, we probably should have been up at half 6-0, right? I mean, we lost yardage on a near turnover that cost the field goal potentially, and then another one later, and then gave up 13 points in the last 5 minutes because of turnovers and running out of bounds, right? A mental mistake, to Harky's point of just cleaning everything up. So the defense looks like it could be in the Big Ten West, really, really make an impact. Honky, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we thought last week was going to be a game about time of possession, but to even get deeper into that, it's more about the amount of possessions. Because if both teams basically had 30 minutes each, but there's a big difference between having 8 possessions in your 30 minutes or 10 possessions or 12. Every additional possession you give them is one more opportunity for them to score. And as we saw in that first half, we played 25 minutes of outstanding defense. Like, holy smokes, like we might shut these guys out the way we're playing kind of defense. And then they scored 13 points in 3 possessions in the last 5 minutes because we kept giving them the ball back with the poor interception, with the running out of bounds and stopping the clock and so on. So that's where you get into little situational things. But the tackling's been fantastic. And it's been fantastic now through 2 games. So I think Minnesota wanted to try to at least do some power against us. I know this is not the Minnesota of last year with Mo Ibrahim, but I think that they wanted to try to do some power against us, and they couldn't. That's good. Last week, I know Colorado doesn't want to do that, but they have these fast, speedy receivers that get all these yards after the catch, and they weren't getting that for the most part last week. Until the defense got out there for too many possessions, and then everything kind of starts to break down at that point. So defensively, this is absolutely a strength that we can build off of. This is a defense that can keep us in every single game moving forward that we have. And we've got to play complementary football. We can't keep putting them out there every single time, but I'm really proud of what they're doing so far, and I'll let someone else talk because I've got some other thoughts on the defense. But I'm really pleased with what I've seen through 2 games.
Yeah, I'll throw it to Boomer just because he talked defense during the offensive segment. So I'll throw out a scenario, Boomer, where if we played complementary football and we actually simply ran the ball, just controlled the ball and limited possessions, and simply just put up, 6 or 8 good solid drives that ended in points for us and limited the possessions from Northern Illinois. How low of a score could we, keep the Huskies down to as that defense plays the way they did the first 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, I would think you could easily match the Southern Illinois levels of 11 points. I mean, that seems quite reasonable, I would think, at this point. And
11, that's the goal.
Yeah.
If we keep them below
Yeah,
11.
keep it to 11 or less. 11 or fewer, I think we're in good shape. One of the weird things, as I've been researching the defense, we've talked about how the defense, plays well and then they kind of tire out. The odd thing is, when it comes to time of possession, I've looked at the first 2 games and it's about split even for both games. That's kind of the weird thing.
Mhm.
I mean, it's almost exactly 30 minutes per team. And I think that just really goes to show that the impact that turnovers has. I mean, you can play great defense, but if you're turning the ball over on offense, that it may not be, physically worn down, but I think there's a big mental part of that. At some point, you kind of wear out.
Well, you
mentally.
give short field, you're
Yeah,
defending,
you're
and
giving
all
them
those
short
things.
fields.
Right?
You're making it easy for them to at least get a field goal out of it. And
Mhm.
and that's been a challenge, I think, for this team. In these first 2 games, it has to be corrected. I don't think we can, flog that necrotic equine enough. and why it's important, I think, for the defense to generate turnovers. Because we've had one, I think, each game so far.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
and I would have expected a few more interceptions, just with the defense, and as much as teams are passing on us so far, I would have thought we would have seen a couple more than that. And just try to get it closer to just a net zero for a game. Whether it's more defensive turnovers that we're able to generate and a few fewer offensive ones, I think that'll make all the difference in the world. I don't even think it's time of possession at this point. And the other big thing is third down conversions. Teams are converting those way too much against us. We're way down at the bottom on that. That's if there were any knocks to this defense, it'd be turnovers generated and third down conversions. I think it'd be the thing they need to fix on if we want to improve that. So.
Rob.
Well, since I'm on a comment kick tonight too, Anthony Hayek, I think that's how you say his last name. He said the first time in a while we're not concerned about missed tackles in open space. That was actually the point that I was going to make as well, Anthony. So thanks for bringing it up. That's one thing that I've noticed about this defense watching these games is how well they're tackling, how well they're getting to the ball, swarming to the ball, especially behind the line. We had 8 sacks. Did we mention that yet? We had 8 sacks against Sanders last week. 8. I don't even think we had 8 sacks all last season. I mean, I'm just saying, like they had more sacks in this game, and they've had more sacks this season than I think they had through like 5 games or 6 games last year or something like that. I think there was a stat that someone put up that I saw that, and it's amazing. And the number of tackles for loss that we're seeing here, the turnovers are going to come, and we're in a brand new defense. You can see the defense, the way they're switching it up. They use 20. I want to say 23 guys on defense last week. 23 was that the number? I mean, that's a lot of guys rotating in and out constantly throughout the game, and that's great. Like that is fantastic that we have that much depth on the defensive side to where we're going to be able to, because the Big Ten is not going to throw the ball around like, unless it's like Michigan or Ohio State. They're not going to throw the ball around like Colorado was doing, and even Minnesota didn't throw it around that much, right? So I mean, I think we're lucky that it gets me pumped. And you were right, Dave. You actually put me in sort of a good mood on the walk home, talking about the defense and how fired up you were about it. So, I mean,
they look good.
They look great. They looked fantastic. Even my boss, who was talking trash to me while I was in Minnesota, was texting me from like up in whatever suite the company I work for owns up there. Like, I didn't expect this. This has me worried. Your defense looks really good. This is not how I expected this to go. Like, she's texting me this while at the game, which in my head was
0-0 in the second
please
quarter.
Stop. You're giving me hope. Like that was like kind of what I said to her, and I'm like, please stop. You're giving me hope. But when I have like people who understand the game and not a bunch of students who are just flipping us off, like talking the football, like they looked at us and they respected our defense and they respected what Rule is doing there, because we looked a lot better than what a lot of people thought we were going to look like on that side of the ball.
Sure. So, Honky, I'll throw a little red meat your way, I think. Tackling. I think Vegas Jerry said this is the best tackling team since 08-09. We've been talking about tackling and bad tackling ever since this show debuted in 2017, and it's just been a mystery. No matter what coaching staff we had, we couldn't tackle. Suddenly, we are a great tackling team. What has changed with this team that makes them great tacklers, Honky?
Well, you play out how you practice, and if
Oh, really?
you don't practice tackling, you're probably not going to be real good at it. And I go back to last year, and after Shenander was let go, and we're done with the fourth game against Oklahoma, we had a bye week, and I think they asked Miles Farmer, how did the first practice go? And he goes, "Well, we tackled. We hadn't done that in 4 years, and so it's going to take us a little while to get good at it." And I think everyone's jaw dropped at that point. And Bill Bush got the defense kind of turned around those last 8 games last year. And a lot of it's just, what you do in practice is how you're going to turn around and play. I think Rule's doing a lot of good things in practice. And this is where we've got to keep some consistency with this. Keep doing it
Be patient.
time after time, and we'll start to see it. Some of the defensive things I was going to mention, Boomer already hit on the turnovers, the fact that we're not getting turnovers. I'm almost shocked considering how good we've tackled, how hard we've hit, how many sacks we've had. A byproduct of that is turnovers, and we haven't got them yet. So imagine if this defense can start to become a little more opportunistic. And the third down defense is absolutely right. I think when I look at like an Iowa, what their offense could be even uglier than what ours has been. Maybe not as turnover prone, but it could be uglier than ours, and yet they still win games because the defense converts plays into points. The special teams gets every single yard, and it's something I want to resurrect a statistic that maybe we haven't talked about as much. And Dave, this is your statistic that you wanted to hit on. So Redcasters that have not heard this yet, you're new to the show in the last year or two, yards per point. And how many yards does it take for you to score a point? If we get a defensive touchdown, 0 yards, score 7 points. And yet we've had possessions where we've gone 60, 70, 80 yards and then turn the ball over and you get 0 points. It's a lot of yards.
Plus yard drives because of penalties that ends up in 0 points.
Yeah, my favorite one was in 2019, Wisconsin. We had a drive where they punted us down to like the 3-yard line. We got all the way down to their 3-yard line. We had a 15-yard sideline infraction penalty along the way. So we had over 100 yards in one drive, didn't score. And it's like, well, it's great for stats. I mean, 100 plus yards, but 0 points come out of it. Yards per point is something that we should be looking at. And Dave, what would be what would be a good average yards per point kind of number for a game? What's a number where you're going to win?
Yeah, this is a still stat if you follow the Steel magazine at all. There you go. And I'm sure Rob could look into this. I would say that like an 11 or so would be a pretty good yards per point number. There are years where it can get a little bit lower than that, but you're trying to be efficient, right? In your points production, not just your offense, but your points production. You also that means you're finishing drives, but you're also having good field position because you're returning punts and kickoffs, and you're having shorter drives because you picked the ball off or gotten turnovers or you've gotten pick sixes or all those things, and you're scoring efficiently across the board. The lower that number is, it's you just don't need as many yards to score, right?
Yeah,
right.
So
average right now, the 60s for college football is somewhere in the 13 yards per point, 13 and a half or so. Your nation leading team currently is Kentucky. They're 8.1 yards per point. So
there you go.
That's very efficient. And
where are we at?
Well, we're 119th, so that's not good. That's 26 and a half yards per point. Now, granted,
26 and a half yards per point.
Yeah, we got a long ways to go to hit the cellar. That's Arkansas State, who's 146 yards a point. And that's not good, folks. So
what about the speaking of what about the Clemson when they lost to Duke?
Clemson's bad. Yeah, they're 131st. They're 68.3 yards a point. Yeah, thanks to that one half they had where you go an entire half without punting or scoring. That's just insane that you can do that.
Clemson turned the ball over 3 different times in that game against Duke inside the 10-yard line, I believe.
Yeah, so they
long
had great
drives,
could not finish. Yep,
could not finish. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yep,
and that's what this is all about, and what Coach Rule's all about is it's about finishing, not just finishing the game, but finishing drives, finishing on defense, finishing defensive possessions on third down, get off the field. To your point, Boomer, even despite the turnovers and everything, when it got to 13-0 at half, and then we come out and we hold them to 3 and out, get the ball, score a touchdown. It's 13-7, and then we had them in 3rd and long. How different is that game if we can get off the field, get off the field right there on 3rd and long? And now we're getting the ball. We're catching a punt, probably somewhere around midfield or in good field position, and we're down 13-7 with the ball. How different does that game go? But I'll give Sanders, their quarterback, all the credit in the world making that completion there, and it does give me some hope here too that looking forward the rest of this, the next 10 games, I don't see another quarterback. I don't know, maybe Maryland's and Michigan's, but that's not really their game either. I mean, Maryland's from just a dynamic.
It might be the best quarterback we play all year. It's possible.
It's very possible that we just saw the best quarterback we're going to see. So I guess if you're trying to find little silver linings and positive things to take away from that, that would be something there. But we got to finish. We got to get off the field there. So,
yep. All right, guys. Anything else, offense or defense, we want to chat about? Boomer, you want to talk about special teams a little bit?
Yeah, that was kind of not a great week for it. So no, I'd rather not talk about it. You got to make those field goals, even if they're long. Dinking them off the upright. And I can't remember who I saw tweeted that hey, it's harder to hit the upright. That should count for something. But
that was
was that a Fopolini quote?
Fopolini one, yep.
Yep. And Bashini had a tough day punting, even with the altitude. I think he averaged about 35 yards of punts. You hope to do better than that, just punting, just to make it a little.
Yeah, we need a little bit better coverage on by the line on a couple of those punts. Those guys were a couple on that muff punt. I went back and watched, and I mean there was a couple guys right there in his face.
Yeah. So that was not the best week of special teams, especially coming off a good first week. So and that's something to look for, I guess, against Northern Illinois. Just going to get back on track and get some good returns set up, and the punting hopefully we don't have to punt, but kickoff returns, or not even kickoff returns. Kickoffs will be better. How about that? Let's go with that. So
there you go. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if they clean that up and we just have some ball control offense, we'll be able to take care of business. That was a good question by Ken McCone. Over under on sacks 4.5. Anybody taking action on that?
I'll take the over on that because first, I mean, the question is before the quarterback gets rid of the ball for Northern Illinois, does he have to put his walker down?
It is 7th-year quarterback Rocky Lombardi, who actually played for Michigan
Rocky
State.
Lombardi should be, right? Dr. Rocky
so
Lombardi.
Long ago. I mean, Apollo Creed might have beat this guy up. I'm not for certain.
He was recruited by Mike Riley or something like that at Michigan State, or Mike Riley's last year or something at.
Yeah, I don't know. He's from Nebraska, West Des Moines.
I mean, there's some Mike Riley connection that I saw posted on Twitter, with.
He's lost Memorial Stadium already, Rob. So we have that going for us.
Yeah, we have that going for us.
And he's failed to score a touchdown that game. So
hopefully this isn't like a Rocky comeback story or anything like that.
Hey, lots of people go to college for 7 years. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they're called doctors.
You might have a PhD already. We don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
He might be going for his second PhD.
So Ken had a little over-under there. I think even though we may not do a full Betcast every week, we probably have a little time to talk the games of the week. So let's throw out the Betcast.
The Betcast Picks of the Week.
All right, let's talk.
We're losing.
I think it is a little intriguing. It's at 11 right now, I think.
It is at 11.
Which game is that, Dave?
DraftKings has it at 11 right now. Yeah, Nebraska has it.
Which is
has it at 11. Yeah,
extraordinarily low number for a Group of 5 MAC team versus a Big Ten team at home, in my opinion. And it started at 13 and actually moved pretty quick. I'm intrigued on that just because I think that's probably a lot of sharp money coming in, big bettors putting big bets down early in the week to drive that number down because of the Jeff Sims injury, right? Like the unknown, totally worth it. If you got, this is your business, this is how you make a living, to put money down early to take advantage of that 13 or 12 line, which has driven it down. I wouldn't be surprised that it gets bumped back up a little bit by Saturday, maybe not all the way to 13, but if Sims starts, then a lot of those bettors might actually hedge their bets, right, and come back on the other side.
I mean, I got it at 10.5, so
You got it at 10.5.
Yeah,
bet
it's
it
currently
at
10.5 right now.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't know. I don't bet on Nebraska, but Boomer, what do you think about that number?
Yeah, and thanks to our lovely state legislature, we wouldn't be allowed to bet in this game here anyway, since it's at home. So that burden is lifted off our shoulders here. So, yeah, 10.5. Even that seems, I think doable for Nebraska at this point. You ought to be able to beat a team like this by 13 points. I think easily 14. So. Yeah, like you said, Dave, it makes sense. The guys jumped on it early, drove that line down with the big money. But yeah, you're probably right. We'll see this come back up. So
if Sims starts, if Sims doesn't start, then I could see it continuing to trickle down.
I get it. Some people might have more confidence in us scoring without Sims in the game. So that's a possibility too. But
and what is that? Is it a 2-hour rule before the game when we'll find out exactly who is starting?
What did the Big Ten announce? I think it's 2 hours or something like that. You have to know.
2 hours, yeah.
So if you want to wait to that last minute, folks, you can if you're in Iowa across the border or something, or an Iowa player with some spare time, before your kickoff, you can get that bet in time yet. So just watch for that. So.
Well, it's funny that you say that though, because Vegas Jer is driving from Minnesota out to Lincoln this weekend, and we were talking about some bets. Because we were talking about
you should stop in Iowa.
He actually said he's going to be stopping in stopping in Council Bluffs to be placing his bets, and I'm going to go with him. His best pick of the week this week is BYU. He has it at plus 9.5. I actually got it at plus 8.5. So on DraftKings, which we are not sponsored by them, but we would love to be sponsored by DraftKings. That would be wonderful. So DraftKings, if you're listening, feel free to throw a little bit of money into our YouTube donation box, and we'd be more than happy to have a beer or two on you.
Yeah, give us a super chat. DraftKings. There you go. So
this is BYU in Fayetteville versus Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
And
all right. So
he's feeling good about it, and I you know what? Jared knows what he's doing, so I'm going to believe him. I mean, his name is Vegas Jared for heck's sake.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Now I have seen this number's moving. It looks like. I mean, I'm seeing as low as 7.5 on some sites. I don't see 9.5 available, so that might change his opinion. I don't know, Vegas Jer. If you're listening live, Vegas Jer, maybe you can tell us if you still like it at 7.5 because that's where it's trending at. There's 8.5s out there as well. But that's interesting. One game I was looking at in the Big 12 since we went to the Big 12, which obviously BYU is Big 12 team.
Big 12 team.
As we all expect. Yeah.
Is the Texas game, Texas last year in the Big 12, Wyoming. Texas kind of a letdown here. They just beat Alabama. They got need to cover at least 29 points right now versus Wyoming. It's a big number, and I could see a backdoor cover for the Cowboys there, where Texas doesn't really care exactly how much they score there in the second half.
Playing like third string guys or something.
Third
guys.
Yeah, there's that Arch Manning guy who probably could play a little bit. I don't know.
Who? Never heard of him.
No, haven't either. And Dave, that 28.5 point spread reminds me of a game I was kind of intrigued by. I saw this line, and that's Western Michigan at Iowa. That's got Iowa 28.5 point favorite. And I wish I remembered. I saw this on Twitter earlier this week, and I meant to write it down. But somebody had said, "Well, as long as Western Michigan can score 0 points, they ought to be able to beat that spread." So playing Iowa. So yeah, 28.5 points.
I've got. We should not be talking trash about how many points Iowa scores right now.
I know. That's all, but I just can't help it. It's fun.
I'm glad you brought the game up, though, Boomer. I did have it circled. I'm looking at the under on that at 42.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because
Western Michigan
hasn't scored a lot of points this year, but yeah,
they are horrible.
If there's any other,
I think Iowa will hold them to less than a touchdown, probably, or maybe a junk touchdown at worst. So if Iowa just scores 28 or whatever, 28-7, that's an easy cover actually.
Yep,
so
absolutely, that's an easy one.
I don't know if they'll get to 28. That's a lot of points for Iowa to cover, but I like the under at 42.
Yep. Vegas Jared, a couple other interesting ones you wanted to talk about. First,
fire
thoughts on Gophers UNC.
It's a plus.
Yeah,
it's a minus 7.5 for UNC right now.
Yeah,
DraftKings has it.
I watched Minnesota again this week, and man, they're playing that kind of early Gophers ball where they're just content to kind of plod along and just keep doing whatever and hope it eventually works, which it did against Eastern Michigan. And
yeah,
I don't know if they can do that against UNC and hope to, stay in that game. That
the thing is, so UNC took care of business versus South Carolina.
Right.
And we'll see how good South Carolina is. I think I'm taking Georgia to cover the 28. 28's a popular line this week. They're
Seems
around
like it
27
week,
and a half, 28 points against the Gamecocks. But then, Carolina struggled versus App State, right? That was, a 4 or 5 point victory. I don't have a lot of faith in the North Carolina defense. It's an intriguing game because it's really just hard to read. I had it on my board, Vegas chair. I took it off because I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, the one thing North Carolina can do is they can score. So I think that can make it tough unless the Gophers can somehow keep it a Big Ten West kind of slugfest. I think it could be problems for them. I don't know. Yeah. That's just my gut feeling. I don't know if I would bet it, but if I would, I'd probably go UNC in that one. So.
Yeah. Vegas share have other ones out there?
He thought this was a crazy line, and this is probably a reaction to all the insanity going around at Michigan State. Washington minus 16 at Michigan State. Yeah, it's kind of an odd one.
Yeah. I think I heard the line today. Like last time I checked, Mel Tucker wasn't actually playing defense, right? Yeah. Obviously they don't have their coach on the sidelines as they would expect, but yeah, I don't know. Honky, do you think as from just a coaching perspective, if you've lost your head coach because of a kind of a controversial thing like that, how does the team react?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on where the team is at in the season. Are you sitting at 0-6 and you lose a coach? What's the scenario? Well, they're sitting at 2-0, and they're bringing Mark D'Antonio back for Christ's sakes to play a role with that. What a bizarre drive back home on Sunday after the Colorado game. We were driving back, Talon and I were, when the news is breaking that all this stuff with Tucker. It's so bizarre, and it's early enough in the season that they either it galvanizes the team, they get behind it, they fight together to for Spartan pride, or it just absolutely tanks them. I have no idea. I haven't paid that close attention to Michigan State, but this is what a absolute bizarre scenario coming out of East Lansing there.
Yeah, and it's tough to get a read on kind of where Michigan State is as a team so far. Who have they played so far? I think it was Richmond and somebody else. They haven't played anyone in the Central Michigan. Yeah, they played one of the directional Michigan schools. Washington hasn't.
Directional Michigan schools have been here in Central and Eastern and Western.
Yeah, all the Michigans
this week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, Washington hasn't played world beaters yet either. They played Tulsa, but they did play Boise State, and they've scored a ton of points in both those games. So, I think a lot of this just depends on where you think Michigan State's going to be at mentally for this. And Washington looks like a decent team, and Penix is there for his 85th year as a quarterback. Some of these guys have been playing forever, so
yeah, he's probably actually played at Michigan State multiple times.
Yeah, he probably has actually. Yeah, so I think familiar with that environment.
The tone of Vegas Jared's question, I'll take it that he thinks that Michigan State can cover that 16. But I guess for our sakes, I hope Michigan State implodes. Because suddenly a game that's maybe a 50-50 home game maybe starts a trend towards us, right? Maryland also hasn't looked as good this year as a lot of people had maybe thought, right? So maybe that's out there, right?
Yeah, Michigan State's one of, we play 10 games left, and because we started on the road the first two, we have 10 games left. 7 of them are at home. And the 3 away, one of them is Michigan State. We travel to East Lansing. If they blow up, implode, if a game that could have been a loss or maybe a 50-50 one all of a sudden gets a little closer to being a victory for us. We'll take every little bit of fortune we can get, although again, crazy scenario that would have caused it.
Right.
Nobody.
Yeah, we're not asking for these kind of scenarios. Please.
Yeah, we're not looking for that kind of thing. But
we just play the games on the schedule.
We just play the games on the schedule, and legitimately, it was like one of those when it was happening. It's like, oh well, this does have an effect. Whatever's going on there, it could be an effect on the football field that can help them or it can hurt them. But it's it's a team that we play about a month and a half from now. So yeah.
Yep. Other games that I've had on my board, it's not a great week, but sometimes you gotta find the tried and true, like a Bama first half cover, looking at 20.5 over USF bouncing back. I think Alabama will probably look to try to get going early on that one. I mentioned Georgia as a potential cover there at 27.5 over South Carolina. I just don't see how South Carolina is going to really keep up at all with them. And then also Ohio State as a 16.5 point spread at halftime. And I think they're going to want to jump out early. So not exciting, sexy picks there, nothing controversial. But if you're looking to make money, those are usually ones that more often than not are going to deliver for you.
Hey, for the record, too, here 2.5 over under birdies. It's supposed to say Rob because apparently somebody else is Redcast Ron out there, but Ron has the rest of the golf season. For the record, Jer, I played yesterday at my local Boomerang golf links, and I had 2 birdies yesterday. So I would just like to say that I would definitely take the over on that one, unless you're talking about moving forward. So suck it, buddy.
Depends on what course you're playing, Rob. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah, never again. Man, that was just terrible golf by my. Oh. Anyway,
all right.
Yeah. The other game I'm curious too. Washington State is playing my Northern Colorado Greeley Bears this weekend out in Pullman, as you mentioned in our chat.
I'll take the Washington State money line.
Whatever that is. Yeah, I would definitely.
Well, I don't know, and obviously the spread isn't. None of that's going to be released probably until like tomorrow or Saturday, right? But I would. UNC is terrible this year, so feel free to just take whatever it is on there and go for it. Bet the mortgage because UNC probably won't score more than 7 points in that game.
Yeah, and Washington State's looked pretty good. I've watched them a couple times now. And
they're legit. Can we talk about that last week? That game, Wisconsin is a team that we've talked a little bit about. Like they're intriguing this year. That not only did they switch coaches, Fickle's name was all over our job too, but they've gone all in. We're making a big switch. We're switching to the spread and going away from what we've done for years and years. We kind of compared it in some ways to the Solich going away and bringing in Callahan here. And boy, that was a bad showing for Wisconsin. Just not just the loss, but the style of it. There's Braylon Allen just looking like he doesn't really fit into that offense. And that's part of the transition there. And they're all in. So I don't know.
Not even getting the most carries.
No,
he's getting more carries.
The offense is kind of fickle.
Very nice. Yeah.
But
and their defense has been really questionable. That's been the thing about them that I've really been shocked at these first couple of games watching.
Who's coming to Camp Randall this week?
God, who do they play?
Georgia Southern.
Oh man, yeah, I was going to say Georgia Southern. Yeah.
Are they bringing the Eagle? That's the big question.
It's only like a 13-point spread or something like that. 13 or 14-point spread.
20.
Was it 20? They moved up.
19.5, 20.5.
So, Dave, what would you do? What would you put on that one?
I'm tempted to take Georgia Southern on that one.
I am too.
I mean, Georgia Southern's going to throw the ball over the yard, and
they're 2-0 already.
Offense suddenly starts to score a lot. I think Wisconsin probably wins the game, as we probably should have beat them last year, but I could imagine that being a high scoring affair. Actually,
I was going to say, and that's a game too where if you're going to take Georgia Southern to cover, you might as well just take them on the money line because I think it's actually a better bet at this point. I could be wrong.
It's 20 points. I don't know about that. I mean, you're getting almost 3 touchdowns, and Georgia Southern's can score. So hey, I don't know about that, but I get it, Rob. I mean, throw a little money line sprinkle on that.
It's plus 70. It's plus 675 on Georgia Southern. That's what I'm saying. Like, I guess you're saying like in case they're not gonna, in case they're gonna win. I feel like it's gonna be an upset. It could be like the upset of the week kind of thing. Georgia Southern goes in.
All right. Well, Rob's going with his gut. I'm just saying
that's not a gut. That's not a gut at all.
But better to just take the 3 touchdowns.
What did they do? What did they do last year against Nebraska in a shootout?
They won. Yes, I understand. The odds of them doing it again are low. If you're just doing that 100 times against a Big Ten team, anyone, they might do it one more time. I mean, they're not going to do that every single year.
I am curious. What's the over under on that game? Like how high do they think that combined score is going to be?
64.
64. Yep. Okay,
that's high.
Yeah, that is pretty high. Yeah, but That's feasible.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to be a shootout.
That's telling you it's a 42-21 Wisconsin win type thing, right? I think Georgia Southern's going to score more than 21 points against them. So, and I don't think Wisconsin's going to go 42, right? I think it's like maybe a 10-point, something like that.
Hey, Vegas Jerry's got one here for producer Skip.
Yep, it's not on the board, but yeah, Colorado minus 23.5 over Colorado State. He's heard it's personal. So, and apparently Dion's thought the same thing. That he's been offended by something Norvell said. I don't know. I don't even know what Norvell.
Every game is personal to Dion. I guess that's the us versus the world mentality that's going to work at least for maybe 1 year with this.
So far, yeah. So. Dave, you have thoughts on that game? I haven't watched Colorado State at all this year, so I have no.
Well, I've been on a thread with Skip and his friends, and they are trying to support the Rams here and taking flyers on the money line and taking the spread. I think if you're literally looking at this, analytically, this is a trap game for Colorado. Even if you're simply saying, hey, they're not going to cover the 23.5. They've just had 2 big weeks against Power 5 opponents. They're supposed to now beat CSU suddenly easily by 23 points. Yep. Beginning of the year, the spread would have been way closer. And then they've got the Pac-12 schedule starting at, is it USC next week?
Oregon. Week 4.
Oregon,
week
right?
4
so
a ton of great games. So this week's
classic trap game here where it's night game 2. They played their first 2 games early, so suddenly now they have all game to sit there and all day to sit there and watch other football games and the different routine. I can totally see CSU covering this in just kind of a slightly uglier game than what we've come to expect now from the Buffaloes.
Has Colorado State only played the 1 game so far this season?
They already had a bye week. Producer Skip had a field day with that.
So at least they're well rested for this game. So if anything,
yes. So we'll see. All right, guys. Oh, look at that.
Yep, there you go.
Hey, Dave, I have one question for you, Dave. Last week's game, I'm not the betting guy. This is kind of the first time I've even sat around the Betcast. But did Vegas make money or lose money last week on Nebraska, Colorado? Because wasn't there a lot put all towards one side or I can't remember.
Yeah, I didn't. I haven't. I mean, Vegas, you might be the better resource on this. I didn't hear the outcomes of that. Yeah, I did see that the money was lopsided. I don't know if money came in on the tail end because they didn't really move that much on Saturday morning, right? I think it hung around that 3. So I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, that was fun. Very cool. Yeah. All right, let's get into some parting shots, huh? Sound good?
Yep.
All right, let's start with Rob.
Well, I just want to say that Husker Nation, keep your heads up, hold them high, because you know what? Dave reminded me very much so on Saturday after the game that we are the best fans in the world. And the fact of the matter is that we're going to come out of these next 2 weeks 2-0. We'll be 2-2 playing Michigan. I'll be out there for the game. I'm looking forward to hanging out with a bunch of you and seeing a bunch of people and some friends out there in Nebraska. And every time I go on one of these trips, I make more friends and there's more people I want to see. And so I'm just looking forward to it. And I will be making the road trip with a couple of my buddies and a person that I've never met before, but he's a Husker fan and he's going to be hanging with us. So I'm looking forward to that. And always looking forward to making new friends out there. So hopefully we can all hang out and tailgate together before that game. Maybe they'll make it a 2:00 start or a 5:00 start for us, since it's not going to be the Fox game of the week apparently anymore. So looking forward to that.
All right. The Kool-Aid Commissioner. Thanks, Rob. Let's go to Boomer.
Yeah, it's just a reminder for Husker fans. If you're a fan of the team, things can be tough and it's not fun to be 0-2 or ever fun to be losing. But, if you're a fan, you stick with it. You don't have to love every bit of it. You can complain. That's fine. It's what you do. I mean, this was a miserable sports weekend for me. Just basically every team I cheered for lost and lost horribly. Whether it was St. Kilda going down to
St. Kilda.
Yeah, St. Kilda went down terribly against Great Western Sydney and ended the season in the playoffs on that. And then Seattle just decided not to play offense in the second half in the NFL game, and it was a rough week. But you know what? You're a fan. You persevere. You're depressed for a few days. You get over it. complain if you want, but whatever, it doesn't fix anything. And get back on that horse, and root again next week. So that's what fans do.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Boomer. Honky, get us out of here.
The first two here, they have to deal with my dad. This is the last time I was in Memorial Stadium. I took Dad with me to Minnesota. So, going back to Memorial Stadium this week, first home game of the year. I mean, kind of to echo Boomer there. I know it's frustrating. It's 0-2, but let's be loud. Let's be proud for these guys. Let's give them a big welcome. This is Coach Rule's first game in the stadium, and he was talking to Coach Satterfield, this morning. I think Satterfield was saying that he walked into the office and Coach Rule is just so pumped about playing inside Memorial Stadium, and it's not about bringing all the negativity of being 0-2. It's we have a chance to go out there. And so I'm excited to get back into the stadium again and to watch the guys against Northern Illinois. I also I noticed something today. There was a question on Twitter about like, what's your first game you went to? And I went and I looked it up, and it was New Mexico, 1985. And I looked at it, was October 5th. I was like, that's Dad's birthday. The first game I ever went to, Dad took me on his 37th birthday to watch us go play New Mexico. So I didn't think about that. I texted that to the family and said that was pretty cool. My final parting shot is volleyball related. Two things. Number one, Stanford. Nebraska went out and really took care of Stanford.
Awesome.
4 sets there. It was a great game on Tuesday night. And as important, it was on ESPN, the flagship network, at 8 o'clock. It even beat the ratings. What I heard, it beat the ratings of like the Yankees against the Red Sox even. And it's just something about the growth of the sport of volleyball. We had 92,000 people in Memorial Stadium a couple weeks ago. Now we're playing, regular season games on ESPN. And then last night, Marquette broke the indoor volleyball record with like 17,000 and some people at the game. And I saw a few comments, and unfortunately, a few of them are even from Nebraska fans that were kind of poo-pooing it or saying, hey, we had 92,000. It's like, no. Celebrate what they did. And if nothing else, that can give us some
Wisconsin
reason
at Marquette, right?
Yeah. So all the more reason
on Fox Sports 1,
Yeah.
So, yep.
All the more reason for Nebraska, Trev Alberts, to try to find some way for us to beat that indoor record too, right? So we just need to find a big enough indoor place. But I think it's good to see the growth of the sport. Boomer, you've talked about this so many times. It's made for TV. It's an exciting game. It's usually a pretty fast game, fast paced, 2 hours. And I think volleyball, it's really starting to take off. So that's a lot of fun. We've got to find somebody that knows it better than we do so that we can actually have some of the conversations on the show.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Great show. Honk, I enjoyed last night's show. Matt's Rule is quality content all through. Looking forward to Saturday night, and let's get a victory out there. For now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
A Herd at Sports Network production.